Remember when TV families actually talked to each other instead of yelling across a reality show set? From 1974 to 1983, Little House on the Prairie gave us 9 seasons and 204 episodes of life lessons, heartbreak, and the occasional brawl. Based on Laura Ingalls Wilder's classic books, the series followed the Ingalls family as they built their lives in the frontier town of Walnut Grove, Minnesota. Michael Landon starred as devoted patriarch Charles Pa Ingalls. Karen Grassle was his steadfast wife, Carolyn, and Melissa Gilbert, Melissa Sue Anderson, and the Greenbush twins brought their daughters, Laura, Mary, and Carrie, to life. And of course, Alison Arngrim stole every scene as the deliciously awful Nellie Olson, the Prairie's original mean girl. Together, they gave NBC one of the most beloved dramas of the 1970s and early 80s, a mix of pioneer grit, family warmth, and surprisingly dark storylines that still hold up today. But behind the wholesome image was a show full of strange production quirks, off-screen feuds, and flat-out bizarre trivia. From Purple Pa to the secret ingredient in Ma's cooking, we're counting down 15 weird facts you didn't know about Little House on the Prairie. And stick around for number 2. You won't believe where the theme song wrote in from. Now, before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype the video so you never miss a trip back through retro TV history. Now, let's get into the countdown with number 15, The Yellow Brick Road Beneath Walnut Grove. When Little House on the Prairie moved from Paramount Studios to MGM's massive Stage 15 in the summer of 1979, the crew started tearing up the old flooring to build the new Walnut Grove interiors. The Ingalls cabin, the schoolhouse, Olson's mercantile. During that tear-up, that's when they found it. Faint yellow bricks still painted on the soundstage floor. The original yellow brick road from the 1939 classic The Wizard of Oz, still intact 40 years later. Melissa Gilbert and Alison Arngrim completely lost it. Arngrim later described how the two of them got wildly excited, dancing around the set and singing while pretending to be Dorothy. They just spent 5 seasons filming Prairie life at Paramount, and now they were standing on a piece of Wizard of Oz history. And here's where it gets wilder, pun intended. The season before the move, Ray Bolger, the original Scarecrow, had guest starred as the wandering performer Toby No. And the title of his first episode? There's No Place Like Home. Bolger filmed at Paramount, so he never saw the Yellow Brick Road discovery, but the coincidence is almost too perfect. Dorothy's line, the Scarecrow's return, and a TV Prairie family landing on the yellow bricks a year later. Sometimes the universe just likes to show off. Number 14, The Explosive End of Walnut Grove. When The Last Farewell aired in 1984, the Little House on the Prairie saga didn't quietly ride off into the sunset. It ended with a full-blown prairie apocalypse. The town of Walnut Grove was blown sky high in one of television's most shocking finales, and Michael Landon gave the order. The decision wasn't just creative flair, it was practical. The show's exterior sets stood on leased land at Big Sky Ranch in Simi Valley, and the contract required that the property be returned to its original untouched condition. Rather than spending weeks dismantling every building, Landon came up with a faster and far more cinematic solution: write the demolition into the story. But this wasn't just about efficiency. Landon had built Walnut Grove from scratch a decade earlier, overseeing its design on a completely empty stretch of land. He personally approved every layout, fence, and storefront, determined to make it feel like a real frontier town rather than a Hollywood backlot. Walnut Grove was more than just a set, it was his creation, and he wasn't about to let it end up in a dog food commercial years later. So, Landon gave it an apocalyptic send-off. In The Last Farewell, a ruthless land baron arrived with a federal marshal to announce he owned all the land in Hero Township, turning the townspeople into tenants. In defiance, Melissa Gilbert's Laura Ingalls smashed her windows, inspiring the others to do the same. One by one, the men planted dynamite in their homes and businesses, deciding that if they couldn't keep their town, no one else would. The explosions were real, there were no models, no trick shots. Walnut Grove School, mercantile, and homes were leveled one after another, leaving only the church and the Ingalls' little house standing. For the cast, it was devastating. Melissa Gilbert described it as the longest funeral she'd ever attended. Those weren't fake tears, they were mourning something they'd helped build for 10 years. Oh, and the Ingalls house? Stan Ivar, who played John Carter, asked Landon if he could keep it. Landon said yes. So Ivar disassembled the entire structure piece by piece and stored it on his own property. It's still there, decades later, fragile and legally contested, but it is intact. Landon blew up Walnut Grove in 1984, and one cast member literally took a piece of it home. Number 13, Nellie Olson, France's favorite mean girl. In the US, fans loved to hate Nellie Olson, but in France, they just plain loved her. In France, where the show was called, and I hope I'm not butchering this, La Petite Maison dans la Prairie, Little House has been rebroadcast so many times that it's become a full-blown cultural institution. And while Americans might think of Laura Ingalls as the heart of the show, the French crowned a very different queen of Walnut Grove, Nellie Olson. Actress Alison Arngrim discovered her unexpected European stardom in the early 2000s when her fan mail suddenly started arriving in French. During a 2002 visit to France, she was mobbed by admirers who treated her like a pop star, calling her La Garce de la Prairie, the bitch of the prairie, and meaning it as a compliment. The French adored Nellie's over-the-top dramatics and unapologetic flair. Instead of seeing her as the villain, they celebrated her as the show's most entertaining rebel. Arngrim leaned all the way into it, creating a one-woman stage show called Confessions d'une Garce de la Prairie, or Confessions of a Prairie Bitch, which she performs entirely in French to sold-out theaters across the country. She's now a bona fide celebrity in France, appearing on TV, in films, and in magazines. Her fame there is often compared to David Hasselhoff's popularity in Germany. It was unexpected, enduring, and oddly perfect. It's one of TV's strangest cultural twists. The spoiled brat of Walnut Grove became a national treasure in France. Turns out, while Americans were rooting for Half Pint, the French were busy falling in love with La Garce. Number 12, Prairie Heat and Pioneering Fainting Spells. For all its postcard perfect sunsets and sweeping wheat fields, filming Little House on the Prairie at Big Sky Ranch in Simi Valley was often more a survival test than a wholesome family drama. The cast spent countless hours under the California sun, where temperatures routinely topped 100 degrees, and those idyllic pioneer outfits don't exactly breathe. The female cast members suffered the most. Their costumes were made of heavy, period-accurate wool with multiple layers and long petticoats that trapped every bit of heat. Karen Grassle wrote in her memoir that her feet boiled inside her custom black boots. The child actors weren't spared either. Melissa Gilbert had to wear thick stockings and multiple skirts even in triple-digit weather. It wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. The combination of relentless heat and restrictive clothing led to frequent fainting spells. Alison Arngrim nearly made fainting her signature move, collapsing so often that the crew started keeping an eye on her whenever the temperature spiked. When the crew dismissed Arngrim's spells as a young girl being weak, it took someone else to prove the point. Sean Penn, appearing uncredited in the first season episode The Voice of Tinker Jones, directed by his father Leo Penn by the way, went down like a sack of potatoes and had to be taken off set for the rest of the day. Suddenly, the crew realized the heat wasn't just uncomfortable, it was genuinely dangerous. Arngrim later thanked Penn for taking one for the team since his collapse finally got the young actors proper hydration and heat safety protocols. It took a teenage boy passing out to convince Hollywood that maybe kids shouldn't faint for authenticity. Pioneering was hell, but at least someone finally noticed. Number 11, Michael Landon's secret height advantage. Standing at 5 feet 9 inches tall, Michael Landon was perfectly average in height, but on screen as Charles Ingalls, he looked like a commanding frontier giant. That took some work. His quest for a taller image started years earlier on Bonanza, where he played Little Joe alongside co-stars Lorne Greene and Dan Blocker, who stood at 6'2" and 6'4" respectively. Surrounded by literal TV titans, Landon became quietly self-conscious about being the shortest Cartwright. So when Little House came along and he stepped into the role of patriarch Charles Ingalls, he was determined to stand tall, literally and figuratively. Landon's go-to trick was a pair of custom boots with hidden lifts. Alison Arngrim later revealed that his footwear wasn't just for show. It added a few inches of pioneer power to every step, and he didn't stop there. He perfected the art of tactical staging, standing on steps, slopes, or mounds of dirt to gain an inch or two, positioning the camera at a slightly lower angle so he'd tower in frame, and occasionally placing shorter cast members beside him during key scenes. Pa Ingalls looked like the commanding leader of Walnut Grove. The boots, the camera angles, and the occasional mound of dirt made sure of it. Number 10, The Curious Case of Purple Paw. By the time Michael Landon was commanding the Prairie as Charles Ingalls, he was fighting another battle against gray hair. Landon started going gray in his early 20s, and by the Bonanza years, he was a loyal box dye customer. But under the California sun, his DIY dye job became one of Little House's most unforgettable behind-the-scenes problems. He insisted on coloring his own hair with an off-the-shelf Clairol product. It worked fine indoors until the Simi Valley heat and ultraviolet light got involved. After a few hours of outdoor filming, his dark brown hair would start shifting shades, from rugged pioneer to something closer to Prince and the Revolution. By midday, Pa Ingalls sometimes had a noticeable lavender tint, earning him the unintentional nickname Purple Pa. Whenever the violet hue showed up on camera, filming had to stop. The makeup team would then scramble to cover it with dulling spray, dark matte powder, or anything that would tone down the grape glow until he could re-dye it later. Karen Grassle later called it one of Landon's most endearing quirks. The sight of their tough, perfectionist leading man suddenly rocking lilac hair was the kind of absurdity that broke even the most serious day on set. For all his efforts to look the part of the frontier hero, Landon couldn't beat basic chemistry. On the Prairie, the sun always won, and Purple Pa became a legend in his own right. Number 9, the secret ingredient in Ma's cooking. Those hearty, frontier-style meals that the Ingalls family gathered around to share looked straight out of the 1870s, but smelled suspiciously like the 1970s. Behind the scenes, the food on Little House on the Prairie was far less rustic than it appeared. Filming in the Simi Valley heat meant that anything truly homemade would spoil quickly or melt under the studio lights, especially during long shooting days with multiple takes. So the prop department got creative, serving up store-bought stand-ins that could survive both the weather and the camera close-ups. Their two secret weapons: Dinty Moore beef stew and Kentucky fried chicken. Whenever the script called for a pot of rabbit stew, squirrel, or anything vaguely brown and hearty, it was usually canned Dinty Moore. It's easy to reheat, identical from take to take, and thick enough to pass for homemade stew on camera. For Ma's fried chicken, the cast didn't have to pretend to enjoy it. It came straight from the Colonel himself. Buckets of KFC were delivered to the set, and Melissa Gilbert later admitted she'd happily snack on leftovers once filming wrapped. The inside joke went so far that one episode, The Wave of the Future, featured a traveling salesman clearly modeled after Colonel Sanders, pitching a fried chicken franchise to Harriet Olsen, who turns him down. It was a sly wink from the writers to the crew's not-so-frontier food supply. So, while Charles and Caroline Ingalls embodied pioneer self-reliance, their dinner table was quietly sponsored by canned stew and fast food. Turns out the secret to surviving life on the Prairie was a lot simpler than churning butter. Just pop the lid and pass the biscuits. Number 8, Laura and Nellie, best frenemies forever. On screen, Laura Ingalls and Nellie Olson were the stuff of pioneer nightmares. Two pint-sized rivals constantly at war with each other, trading insults, hair pulling, and the occasional mud bath. However, off-screen, Melissa Gilbert and Alison Arngrim were the exact opposite. Instead of feuding, they became inseparable. The friendship began early in production when the two young actresses realized they had something in common. They were both sweating to death in wool dresses under the Simi Valley sun. Between the heat, the long hours, and the heavy costumes, they quickly found comfort in each other's company, and comedy became their survival strategy. Arngrim later called their friendship a mutual support system. While they were supposed to be bitter rivals on camera, between takes, they'd whisper jokes, confide about teenage crushes, and vent about Michael Landon's unpredictable moods. They were each other's sanity check in a world that demanded constant smiles and perfect takes. To break up the monotony of shooting, the pair became legendary pranksters. They'd hide props, mess with the sound crew's gear, and try to make each other laugh during the most serious scenes, sometimes succeeding a little too well. When Arngrim's character Nellie later married Percival Dalton, she and actor Steve Tracy decided to prank Gilbert by turning their on-screen kisses into ridiculously exaggerated makeout sessions. According to Arngrim, "We did it just to gross Melissa out, and it worked every time." Their friendship endured long after Little House ended. While many childhood Hollywood bonds fade, Gilbert and Arngrim remained close, reuniting frequently at conventions and sharing behind-the-scenes stories with fans. Turns out the biggest prank Gilbert and Arngrim ever pulled was convincing America that they hated each other. Now, if you're enjoying these trips behind the scenes of Little House on the Prairie, hit that like button and subscribe, and tell us in the comments if you were Team Laura or Team Nellie. Now, back to the countdown with number 7, Nellie Olson's Wig of Woe. Nellie Olson's perfect blonde curls may have looked like pure Prairie glamour, but for Alison Arngrim, that hairstyle was more torture chamber than beauty parlor. The spoiled, scheming Nellie became one of TV's most iconic mean girls, but the price of that signature look was real, physical pain. In the first few episodes, the show tried using Arngrim's natural hair. The problem was it was straight and fine, refusing to hold the tight ringlets the character demanded, especially in the outdoor heat and humidity of Simi Valley. Hairstylists would spend hours every day with old-fashioned curling irons, damaging Arngrim's hair and scalp, only to watch the curls fall flat by mid-afternoon. The solution was a custom wig. Multiple custom wigs, actually. The show's hairstylists needed Nellie's sausage curls to look identical in every episode, so they created several versions, including stunt wigs specifically for scenes where Nellie would get pushed into the mud or covered in mess. No sense ruining the good wig when Laura Ingalls was about to exact her revenge. The problem wasn't the wig itself, it was how they attached it. The heavy, tightly curled wig was secured with metal combs jammed into Arngrim's natural hair, then pinned down with dozens of sharp bobby pins. Every filming day, those metal combs dug into her scalp, and the combination of pressure, heat, and weight made for constant agony. By the end of the day, Arngrim's scalp would sometimes bleed from the repeated friction. In her memoir, she compared the wig to a medieval torture device. As Nellie's character matured and her hairstyle evolved into a more elaborate bouffant, Arngrim nicknamed her new wig the Jiffy Pop wig, a poofy, oversized creation that somehow managed to be even more ridiculous than the ringlets. But here's the kicker. After Arngrim left the show, her original wig didn't retire. It was passed on to the actress who played Nancy Olson, Nellie's adopted sister and the show's new resident villain. Nellie Olson's curls outlived Nellie herself. Number 6. The twin behind Carrie's famous fall. The youngest Ingalls daughter, sweet little Carrie, wasn't played by one child actor, it actually took two. Identical twins Lindsay and Sidney Greenbush shared the role throughout Little House on the Prairie's run, a common Hollywood workaround for strict California child labor laws. Under state regulations, child actors could only spend a few hours a day on set and had to devote part of that time to schoolwork. By hiring twins, the production team could seamlessly swap one out for the other, doubling the available filming time without breaking any rules. When one Greenbush sister hit her daily limit, the other would step in, dressed in the same costume, ready to pick up exactly where her twin left off. But what the Greenbush twins are best remembered for wasn't their shared role, it was one spectacularly adorable accident. In the show's opening credits, we see Laura, Mary, and little Carrie running joyfully down a grassy hill toward their home, until Carrie suddenly takes a tumble and rolls into the grass before popping back up, smiling. That stumble wasn't in the script, it was just a happy accident that became television history. Now here's what happened. Right before filming, the twins had been napping. In the rush to get the shot, someone accidentally put Carrie's shoes on the wrong feet, and as the girls ran down the hill, the discomfort threw off her balance and she tripped. Instead of cutting the take, Michael Landon loved it. He thought it perfectly captured the natural, unpolished spirit of childhood, so he kept it. That genuine little fall became one of the most memorable moments in the series, playing at the start of every episode for years. The fall was so iconic, Family Guy spoofed it years later. One twin, wrong shoes, and perfect timing. That accidental tumble made it into the credits for 8 seasons. Nobody planned it, but everybody remembered it. Number 5. Pa Went Commando. Michael Landon might have been one of America's favorite wholesome father figures as Charles Ingalls, but behind the scenes, he was a lot less buttoned up than he appeared. Literally. According to multiple cast members, Landon often went commando while filming. No underwear, just prairie pants. Landon took great pride in his physique and kept himself in excellent shape, working out regularly and showing off his tan, muscular build whenever possible. Between his shirtless farm scenes, open vests, and perfectly fitted trousers, he wanted to be seen as a rugged, handsome frontier hero, not just a folksy family man. Of course, going commando created some, let's call them complications. Grassle admitted in her memoir that Landon's no underwear policy was both distracting and, at times, uncomfortable for his co-stars. The crew found it amusing, but for the actors filming emotional family scenes, it did make eye contact a bit of a challenge. The decision was very on brand for Landon's off-camera persona. He was confident, image-conscious, and a little rebellious. It was a far cry from the modest, soft-spoken Pa audiences saw on screen. So, while Charles Ingalls preached humility and hard work on the prairie, Michael Landon was quietly redefining free range. Number 4. When Ma Asked for a Raise. On screen, Charles and Caroline Ingalls were the gold standard of pioneer partnership. They were devoted, patient, and united through every hardship the Prairie threw at them. Off-screen, however, Michael Landon and Karen Grassle's relationship was far more turbulent, marked by tension, silence, and one bitter feud that nearly broke their working dynamic. The trouble began when Little House on the Prairie became a massive hit. Ratings soared, NBC was making serious money, and Landon was getting paid as the star and as the show's writer, director, and executive producer. Meanwhile, Karen Grassle, the emotional anchor of the series, was being paid far less than her male co-star. When she finally asked Landon for a raise, the conversation didn't go the way she'd hoped. According to Grassle's memoir Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, Landon dismissed her request outright, reportedly telling her she should be grateful to have the job. He even made personal remarks about her appearance and used her past struggles with alcoholism against her, a move that deeply hurt and embarrassed her. The fallout was immediate. Their once warm rapport turned icy. From that point on, the affection between Pa and Ma seen on screen became pure acting. Grassle described their professional relationship as tense and emotionally draining, especially during scenes that required intimacy or tenderness. For several years, they barely spoke beyond what was necessary for filming. Years later, when Grassle learned Michael was dying of pancreatic cancer, she made a decision. She called him, they talked, and I mean really talked, for the first time in years. She visited him at his Malibu home, and they addressed the years of silence and hurt openly. They made peace before he passed away in 1991. Not every workplace feud gets that kind of ending, but theirs did. Number 3, the Bonanza episodes that rode into Walnut Grove. If some Little House on the Prairie storylines ever gave you deja vu, you weren't imagining things. Michael Landon was a master recycler, and he didn't just reuse props or sets. He literally repurposed full episodes of Bonanza and gave them a fresh coat of prairie dust. Because Landon had written and directed many Bonanza scripts himself, and both shows were NBC productions, he owned the creative rights to his earlier work. So when Little House needed new material, he dipped back into the Bonanza archives, swapped a saloon for a schoolhouse, renamed a few characters, and boom, new frontier drama, baby. Viewers back then had no streaming or reruns to jog their memory, so it was the perfect con. Several Little House episodes borrowed heavily from Bonanza storylines with remarkably similar themes and plots. The Season 2 episode A Matter of Faith was lifted directly from Bonanza's A Matter of Circumstance. Both involve a main character facing a grisly self-amputation after a severe injury, with Joe Cartwright in the original and Caroline Ingalls in the remake. He was only 12 on Little House, mirrored Bonanza's He was only 7, right down to the emotional beats about a boy wounded in a robbery. Season 5's Someone Please Love Me reworked Bonanza's A Dream to Dream, about a lonely soul finding unexpected love. And the Season 9 episode Little Lou echoed the same underdog theme as Bonanza's It's a Small World. For Landon, this wasn't laziness, it was efficiency. He knew which stories worked and wasn't afraid to give them a second life. After all, why write something new when you could dust off an old Bonanza script and slap a Little House title on it? Number 2, the Bonanza tune that became the Prairie theme. That warm, sweeping Little House on the Prairie theme, the one that plays as the Ingalls girls run down the hill, wasn't written for Little House at all. It was actually a leftover from Bonanza. Composer David Rose, who scored music for Bonanza, Little House, and later Highway to Heaven, originally wrote the melody for a 1971 Bonanza episode called Top Hand. Back then, the tune had a faster tempo and bold Western flair. Horns blaring, percussion pounding, fit for a cattle drive or chase scene. When Michael Landon launched Little House 3 years later, he asked Rose to adapt the piece for his new frontier family drama. Rose slowed it down, softened the arrangement, and replaced the brass with strings and a tender French horn solo. The result was that unmistakable melody that opened every episode for years. It was a perfect bit of music recycling, practical, familiar, and deeply effective. It was the same composer, same melody, just different show. David Rose knew how to stretch a good tune. Number 1, the hidden cost of being Pa. Michael Landon made Charles Ingalls look like the kind of dad every kid wished they had. Steady, moral, and always ready with a life lesson. But off-screen, Pa was running a frontier empire built on caffeine, cigarettes, and sheer willpower. Landon wasn't just the star of Little House on the Prairie. He was the writer, director, producer, and unofficial god of Walnut Grove. Every script, shot, and edit went through him. The cast adored him and feared him in equal measure. And while he protected Little House's family-friendly image like it was sacred, the atmosphere on set was anything but. Crew members joked it was Mad Men on the Prairie. Coffee mugs full of wild turkey, clouds of unfiltered smoke, and one exhausted perfectionist holding it all together. Landon chain-smoked, drank before lunch, and still powered through 14-hour days rewriting scenes and giving line readings. He was brilliant, controlling, and completely unstoppable. A man who carried the show on his back until it nearly broke him. Even the decision to blow up Walnut Grove in the final movie was pure Landon. It was dramatic, defiant, and entirely on his terms. Pa Ingalls was wholesome. Michael Landon was complicated. And the price of keeping Little House on the Prairie perfect was the man at its center burning twice as bright and twice as fast. And there you have it, 15 weird and wild facts about Little House on the Prairie. Which one surprised you the most, and which ones did we miss? Let us know in the comment section below, and if you liked this video, hit like, subscribe, and ring that bell for more retro TV deep dives. We dropped the playlist link in the description. Until next time, this is Remember When.